Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started, and we invite you to take your seats for one of the last two panels. While you're doing that, I just want to express my gratitude for all of you who have managed to make travel plans that allowed you to stay after lunch and then certainly after the last coffee break of the last afternoon. We often see this room emptying out like crazy, and it's not emptying out like crazy, it's only emptying out a little bit. So thank you so much for those of you who are here and ready for some good information. So my name is Rebecca Casper. I serve as the mayor of the city of Idaho Falls, Idaho. And I also have the privilege of participating on the Energy Communities Alliance Board Executive Committee. I serve as the vice chair, along with Mayor Gary and others. And I also get to be a part of what we're calling the new nuclear subcommittee or committee. And we have a great deal of enthusiasm amongst our member communities and a growing level of interest from non-ECA communities who we soon hope will be ECA communities when it comes to the idea of becoming part of the new nuclear economy. And so today's topic is one that's personally exciting to me, but it's also a highly relevant topic. Things that we're going to touch on today have been introduced by the Secretary of Energy herself. They were touched on yesterday in remarks from Ike White, from Congressman Fleischman, from Congressman Newhouse today, from oh crud, I'm blanking on the title, but sorry, Mr. McConnell this morning. Does he have one of those super long titles? Yeah, so forgive me for assistant and deputy and secretary and everything else that goes. Principal probably is in there too, but anyway. Today, we're discussing advanced energy development, and I guess with apologies to the DOE org chart, one of the reasons why I think this is important is because this is a time when DOE and NE, to create a silly analogy, this is the marriage of NE and EM. And then don't ask me to figure out how NNSA fits into that or if they do. But maybe a better analogy than a marriage there would be that NE and EM are two sides of the same coin. The coin is called nuclear and or nuclear science. And then we've got the practical side, and we've got the very exciting, future-oriented side. And it's been that way over time. Ever since we started with nuclear research that brought us the Manhattan Project, or that was the Manhattan Project. And ever since then, every innovation has brought us something new and interesting to deal with as a country. You also see that cycle with the naval reactors program. I'm waiting for the movie Rickover myself. I think that will be a really good movie. But again, you see that exciting application of research and a problem to solve and a solution, and then over time, waste to be stored, again, another problem or opportunity, and progress. So anyhow, what we have today are a very diverse group of 6 very excellent professionals. We have 2 DOE officials, we have 1 developer, we have 1 utility person who's also a project represents a full-blown nuclear development project. We have a contractor's perspective, and we also have another government employee who represents sort of a specialized niche perspective. And so I'm going to go ahead and ask everybody to take about 30 seconds to introduce yourselves and maybe what you do. And again, keep it really brief because this is not about you, it's about what we're going to talk about. And so let's go ahead and go with Mike, who you come from UAMPS, the Joint Action Agency, with strong utility perspective here. So.
Yes, Mayor Casper, thank you so much. I am an attorney by trade, got into the utility space sort of accidentally following law school, but yes, we're working on the carbon-free power project that I'll talk to you about in a second.
Very good. Mike Squires. Thank you. Mr. Schrader.
Todd Schrader, Director of Project Management, Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. So we heavily involved in the 2 advanced reactor projects, TerraPower and X Energy. and a number of other projects such as hydrogen hubs and carbon capture and rural and remote work, et cetera. So good to be here, and obviously used to work for EM, so I know a lot of you also.
Thank you.
Hi, Ashley Saunders, Program and Sustainability Management with UCOR. We're the environmental cleanup contractor in Oak Ridge for DOE's environmental management program there. Our program is responsible for several things as it relates to integrated planning across the Oak Ridge Reservation, but also federal land reuse and supporting the nuclear renaissance that's happening in Oak Ridge. So look forward to getting a chance to talk about that.
Thank you, Ashley. Stephanie.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Stephanie Ware, and I serve as the Siting and Regulatory Strategy Manager for the National Reactor Innovation Center, or NRIC. Our mission is to accelerate the deployment and demonstration of advanced reactors, and because successfully deploying advanced reactors requires strong partnerships among communities, innovators, and the national labs, I also work with GAIN, the Gateway for Accelerated Innovation in Nuclear, on stakeholder engagement and state engagement.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ingrid Cobb, and I'm the Director of the Office of Management. Yes, I have a bug flying around my head. It's a moth, for the Department of Energy, and I also serve as the department's Chief Sustainability Officer. I am part of the core team, along with some other folks who are here in the room today, for the new Cleanup to Clean Energy project, and really excited to be here this afternoon to share with you some of the details about this new, very, very exciting initiative that really has the potential to change the way this country uses electricity. So look forward to the conversation.
Very good. Mike. Matthew.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Hertel. I am representing X-Energy, one of the advanced reactor developers here today. We are deploying a Generation 4 SMR in Texas by the end of the decade. And we also do nuclear thermal propulsion, lunar surface power, and manufacture fuel with a facility called TRISO-X, or a company called TRISO-X. I've been with X-Energy for about 3 years. I'm the INC lead, so I do all the instrumentation and control, designed all the sensors for the reactor and the steam generator, and right now I'm busy doing controls analysis for our PSAR, our preliminary safety analysis report. So I'm a very technical person. I'm not typically the person that gets to go out and do this fun stuff, but every once in a while they let me come out and do that. And I'm here to be an open book and talk about our perspective as a developer and what motivates us and how we can contribute to this mission. So thank you. It's an honor to be up here with everybody.
Well, thank you. It's the honor is all the way around. And so our topic is encouraging us to take and have a forward focus when it comes to talking about our sites. And it certainly requires a great deal of optimism. And I guess our goal today is not really to sell anything or to convince you of anything, but we do want to come away from our time together with a realistic understanding of why we're having this conversation, where we want to be, and how we're going to get there. And so the very first place to start is with what Ingrid already identified, the Cleanup to Clean Energy program. And I'm going to ask maybe Todd and Ingrid just to take a moment between the two of you, we'll start with Ingrid, to describe this cross-DOE initiative. It's multidisciplinary or multi-departmental, right? Or multi-division. I don't know what the different lanes in the org chart are called, but anyway. And it also, I guess I want to know, how are the various departments working together on this, and what are the goals? Not everybody here was privy to the Secretary's announcement, so if you could just sort of summarize some of that for us.
Okay, I will certainly do that. And the Secretary likes to say that this initiative is really a marriage of several programs within the department. And I have to share with you, there was an industry day where the Secretary kicked off this initiative. It was on July 28th, and Ike White, who's sitting in the front row here, was with a couple of his colleagues, one from NNSA and one from the Office of Nuclear Energy, and they were having so much fun. I commented, boy, this honeymoon is off to a great start. I mean, it was quite amazing. They really were collaborating as a team, and it's fantastic to see. So the Cleanup to Clean Energy initiative, when the Secretary spoke about it, I really liked the way she kicked it off, because what she did is she reflected on the history of the Department of Energy as a department that is here in the country, serving the country and coming up with solutions when the country is in crisis. And she started her remarks going back to World War II. And as we all know, the predecessor agencies to the Department of Energy developed the atomic bomb. And as a result of that action, World War II ended much earlier than it otherwise would have. So the predecessor to the Department of Energy solved a huge, huge problem. Then she fast forwarded to the 1970s when we had the gasoline crisis. And sometimes I like to ask folks in the room, does anybody remember odd even days? I remember, oh, I see a few hands going up. Odd even days. I'm not going to tell the rest of you what that means. You'll find out during the break. But the nation was in crisis. We didn't have enough gasoline. We had gasoline lines. And so the Department of Energy was established at that time to tackle that crisis, and we did. So now we go to 2023. Our planet is in crisis. Our planet is under attack, and we all know what that is about. So the secretary, and this was really her idea, said, we have all this land at DOE, and we have a lot of land. When you look out, when you go to some of our sites, it doesn't look like a lot is going on. In truth, it's serving as a barrier for some of the activities that are happening. But could that land be used for multiple purposes? And why don't we use it for clean energy development? And so the secretary's vision is not to just have some small clean energy projects, and we have some of those, but to really go big, think big. We are talking about multiple gigawatt projects where we can generate so much electricity, we can power cities. We can power our sites, which is what we want to do, but we can also power cities. This is going to benefit the department, the communities around our sites, and benefit the public, and help the administration achieve the goals for clean electricity that they have set forth. So that's what the Clean Up the Clean Energy project is really about. So how are we going to do this? The way that we're going to do this is, first of all, we have identified land at 5 of our sites that our programs are saying is appropriate for clean energy development. It can serve multiple purposes. Our plan is to run competitions, because we want to do this competitively, to lease the land to entities. I'll just call them developers, but developers can come in lots of forms, but lease the land to developers, and the developers, as part of the conditions of the lease, would develop a clean energy project. It could be wind, could be solar, could be nuclear, could be a lot of things. We're following the definition in the President's Executive Order 14057, if you would like to look it up. It provides a definition of carbon pollution-free electricity, and that's what we're using as our roadmap for the types of technologies that we would entertain. So we've identified the 5 sites, and I don't know if they've been discussed, but I will tell you what they are and give you a few more, and give you a few details. And please just tell me if I'm talking too long, because I could talk about this for hours. First one is Hanford, Washington. Is anybody here from Hanford? Oh yeah, woohoo. You guys are in the forefront. You are in the forefront. You have said to the secretary that you have 19,000 acres. 19,000 acres that could be used for clean energy projects. That's amazing, just amazing. Think what we could do with that, and think about the electricity that can be generated for the public. So that's Hanford, and we'll get into this later, but Hanford is having an information day on September 22nd. You can Google it. We have websites that have all this information, and we welcome everyone to attend. All right, the next site, this is another EM site, is the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in Carlsbad, New Mexico. And I have to tell you, when the folks out at WIP said, oh, we have 9,000 acres that could be used for this purpose, we were all surprised, because when you think about WIP, and if you've been there, you know that you're paying attention to everything that's going on underground, not what's happening on the surface. But they're saying 9,000 acres could be put forth for clean energy projects. Next EM site, Savannah River. Do we have people here from Savannah River? A few over there, a few out there. You all have identified 5 different tracts of land on your site, and they total about 13,000 acres. Again, incredibly significant. Think of what we could do with that. Moving on to NNSA, and this is where we get into the marriage, and we have the different organizations involved. NNSA, the Nevada National Security Site, I still call it the test site. They are offering up 4 tracts of land, 2,000 acres each. And if you've been there, you know it's in the desert. The sun shines all the time, lots of opportunity there. The final one is the Office of Nuclear Energy. They have offered up 7 tracts of land at their site in Idaho, a whopping 23,000 acres of land. That's pretty darn amazing. And of course, you know, one of the things we would be looking for in a lot of this land is nuclear, because that's very much aligned with the Office of Nuclear Energy's mission. So those are the tracts of land we are looking at, the sites we are looking at, and I'll probably stop there, and then there'll be plenty more to share.
Okay. Thank you for that. Todd, was there anything you wanted to add? I think that was a pretty thorough intro, but you may have another angle that you want to share.
Yeah, I think although the applied programs are not directly involved as far as the land ownership, one of the things I found once I moved over from the EM side is there was quite a strong wall between the nuclear side of DOE and the non-nuclear side. I think what you're seeing now with projects like this is breaking that down. And so there are lots of areas that my program, Loan Program Office, EERE, FECM, Office of Electricity, they can add some technical assistance. I mean, many of the technologies being deployed now were developed 20 years ago at our national labs and areas like that. So I think there's a wealth of technical capability in the applied offices or the deployment offices that we can assist. And in fact, we have already talked to EM and given some thoughts about NEPA for big, large projects like this, deployment issues you're going to run into, PPAs, that type of stuff. So I think there's a real opportunity to bring all parts of the department together in some of these efforts.
All right, thank you. Now, Ashley, your expertise is working out of Oak Ridge, and there is not, Oak Ridge wasn't just listed as one of the 5, but I'm guessing that you might have had a little bit of experience with, and you may not have, and somebody else, I may have the wrong panelist, but I'm thinking my educated hunch is that, we're talking about a lot of land, and we're talking about making this available, whether it's going to be granted or leased or, in some way transitioned from being managed by DOE to being managed by someone else. We're talking some real estate transactions. Have you had experience, and can you save us a lessons learned panel in 3 or 4 or 5 years by telling us what you've learned with your interaction?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the Clean Up to Clean Energy initiative is a really exciting accelerator to implement some of these projects across the complex, but I want to give EM a lot of credit, for what they've done through their reindustrialization efforts over the last several decades, which is more of a returning land to beneficial reuse by transferring it to the community reuse organizations and then to back into the community. So not a lease model, but an actual deed transfer. But in Oak Ridge specifically, this model has been incredibly successful over the last several decades. And right now we're seeing an exciting time where the cleanup of the former K25 site, ETTP, is transitioning into a clean energy park focused on nuclear. So it's really a nuclear renaissance that's happening in Oak Ridge that's facilitated by the same concept, but it doesn't just stop with nuclear. There's also solar arrays at the site. There's interest from battery storage companies. So there's just a lot of, I believe, to your point, there's a lot of things that we can learn. The models may not be exactly the same, but the approaches that we took, the way that you have to get community buy-in and support, you want a vision for what the end state is, so that informs the way you do cleanup, and you partner with your regulators on your decision making and your land use requirements and the way that you approach your NEPA. All of those things factor in, because sometimes these processes or these decisions do take time. So to be able to have that end in mind, come to an agreement on what you want the site to look like, and then understand kind of when you need to act on some of those processes is really important, because, you know, we all want to be, we know urgency is the key right now. And so the quicker we can kind of make decisions and start these processes, the quicker we can be ready to move out on those projects.
All right, and so I just want to take a second and see if there's anybody who can get at the heart of the question, and that is it easy to do a land transfer? And what do we need to know to be able to do it? If someone out here is a developer who wants to get involved in this, are you opening up a can of worms when you decide, oh, yeah, I'd like to be a part of that? Is it a 5 or 10 year conversation?
So as part of the Cleanup for Clean Energy initiative, we are contemplating leases.
Okay.
Because we still need the land. We still need it as a buffer in many instances, but it can, while it's serving as a buffer, it can be developed for clean energy purposes. So it's going to be dual purposed.
Okay, and I'm assuming that the lease rate will be a dang good bargain and not just, you know, maybe, or is it going to be market rate?
That's to be determined, but we do have a lot of flexibility there. Just so everybody is aware, under the authorities we have, the Department of Energy actually will not receive the money from the lease. It will go into the US Treasury. But that's okay, because this is all for the greater good. And, you know, if it goes to the US Treasury, and plus there's lots of clean energy that is going to be produced. So, yeah.
Sounds good. So the lessee, we're assuming, will be a developer of some kind or another, whoever wants to take this piece of land and turn it into a productive clean energy proposition. Yes. And so, and you were saying that we're going big, and when you said go big, you talked about gigawatts. But I'm wondering, are we going even bigger than that and saying, hey, it doesn't have to be a clean energy producing utility style development. It could actually be something that supplements the clean energy approach, which in some cases, it might be what Congressman Fleischman talked about yesterday. It might be a HALEU production facility, or perhaps TRISO fuel, or something along those lines. Is that contemplated in the definition, or are we only talking about utility scale production of energy?
So what we are talking about, at least at this point in time, is utility scale production.
Okay.
We are looking for electricity to be generated. Okay. That is what we are really looking for. And it could be that we have some projects that are smaller than 2 gigawatts. But we really do want to see that result, because as I was talking about, you know, the Secretary is concerned about the fact that we don't have enough clean electricity in the country, and we can make a huge difference in making sure that there is more available for everyone, for our sites, for our communities, and for the public at large. And if we're doing this in different parts of the country, and we're starting off with 5 sites, it doesn't mean we're limited to 5 sites. We'll be expanding it even further, so we can have a real impact all over the country. This is a tremendous opportunity. And I will say, we're not the only ones doing this. DOD is doing the same thing at many other bases. They are leasing to developers to design, construct, operate clean energy projects. We've been talking with DOD quite a bit, learning from their experiences. And then also, fairly recently, the Bureau of Land Management. They're the ones who have been leasing land for many, many years for the development of oil wells, for example. They are now leasing land for the purpose of clean electricity development. So just think about all these agencies doing the same kind of work. We're really going to have a huge impact on the nation. It's just going to build.
Well, I've heard in this meeting over the last 2 days, smaller sized parcels being available for a phase 2 when you're ready to go there. But I guess I want to turn to Matt and Mike for a minute. I have, you know, enough knowledge about utilities to get myself in trouble. But in my work with our utility in our community, I would say it's not finding a project per se, it's finding a successful project that is the trick. And successful projects require capitalization, and that's more of an issue than finding real estate. you can find real estate. What you can't find is the money for the lease or for everything else that's involved. In the case of nuclear, for the 10 to 20 year development costs you pay to get through the NRC. So I guess I'd like to find out from you, do you see the Clean Up to Clean Energy program being the missing piece, or to getting even more clean energy being developed, or do you feel like you need a little more help than just that? And so let's go with Matthew and then Mike.
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental piece. It's not the only piece. It's not a silver bullet, but I think if you look at what you need to deploy clean energy, you need an operator, an owner, a site, and then a off-taker, someone to purchase what you're making, right? So I think if Ingrid mentioned the DOD is kind of setting an example that they want to follow, I think the US Air Force is leasing to a microreactor, and their agreement is a fixed price power purchase agreement along with that lease, I think. I'm not 100% aware of the details, but I think taking that approach where there's land, but there's also a power purchase agreement with a fixed price that allows us to have certainty that if we build in that location, the market will be there for the foreseeable future, and we're not just having to produce at a market rate that's impacted by the rises and falls of the energy market prices. So I think that power purchase agreement is the other big piece besides a site, but I think a site provides, just by its nature of being located somewhere and being fixed in place, that you have an operator, a utility that operates in that region, you have a community that comes along with that site, and that is so important to making a successful project. You have a labor force around that provides the talent for that site to be built and to be operated. So I think it's a really critical piece. It's not the only piece. I think that purchase agreement, offtake agreement is the other big part of it that needs to be there.
Thank you. I want to put a pin in power purchase agreements and get back to that in a second. Okay. But to summarize, it's necessary, the real estate is necessary but not sufficient to make a project happen. Mike, what are your thoughts about the contribution that the real estate makes versus some of the other pieces?
Thank you. And I would echo what Matt said about all those factors. Surely, I think why on a recent trip we took congressional staff to the site, and one of the reasons obviously was to talk about the small modular project that Congress has been investing in, but also one of the questions they asked was why Idaho, right? Why the site? Why INL? And outside of the expertise, the community, there's been a really good and positive partnership with CPP, UAMPS, the Department of Energy, the state, FLOR, all of those, and those partners are critical. There's already enough obstacles in the way. The more we can overcome through partnerships, I think that helps, and certainly the site and the real estate. I don't know if you'd like me to comment on some of the financing part, but I don't know if that's going to come at a later point, but that would be a big one, I would think.
I do want you to comment on the financing, and then that'll take us back to power purchase. I just want to clarify one thing. I have, in a way, tried to be a little devil's advocate-ish and characterized Clean Up to Clean Energy as real estate. Well, clearly, there's a little more to it than it just being real estate that's available for lease. It comes with some advantages that Mike had just mentioned, right? And that Matt had mentioned. It comes with a community that's fairly accepting. It comes with, some history where people expect DOE involvement or energy involvement there. So there are some real positives there. But let's go ahead and say if there's anything you want to say about power purchase agreements or about financing, and then we'll let Matt and everybody else jump in on power purchase.
Yeah, I think the offtake comment, obviously you need clients, you need to market this power. And what we've experienced where we are in the project's development right now is in the due diligence conversations we're having with potential off-takers is the PPA contractual term, right? They want to sign up for a fixed cost, no more. Well, that doesn't help us with mitigating the commercial risk associated with a project like that. So where we have also really focused on the financing component is the newly created IRA ITC, which I think obviously we're still working through a number of those conditions and those newly created provisions. in particular, the energy community bonus credit. I'm just going to draw attention to that too, because as drafted right now, the IRA does not allow us to get that 10% adder. So as we work through this, the financing, the relationship that we have with the federal government is indispensable. And a number of those issues that we're encountering as a first of a kind, and this far along with a projected commercial operation date of 2030, we're in the midst of all of those items, but certainly the off-taker and the financing relate to I think two of those obstacles.
Can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
I do think it's really important, someone brought up about financing. A powerful tool out there for particularly some of the other energies like hydrogen or carbon capture, whatever, are the tax credits, the investment tax credits and the production tax credits. These fall under 45B, 45C, 48Q, all those. They really do pencil the deals a lot better. And those are very powerful tools that are out there from both the IRA, particularly the IRA, and a little bit from the IIJA before that. But it's something to think about when projects are looking at financing.
Go ahead, Ashley.
I was just going to say, from a little different perspective in Oak Ridge, we already have a significant amount of private equity investment in these companies siting in Oak Ridge. And so now the next step to ensure the sustainability of this ecosystem is that tier 1, tier 2, or excuse me, to support the tier 1s, we need the tier 2 through 5 suppliers. So the governor of Tennessee has stepped up and created the Nuclear Energy Advisory Council, which Ken Reuter, UCOR's president and project manager, serves on and leads the regulatory component of that. But what that's really intended to do is to help make this a robust economy so that we don't just draw these tier 1s to the area and not set them up for success. So it's helping remove the regulatory roadblocks, and that's not just from an NRC perspective. That's utilizing this land, maybe potentially making additional federal land available for use. How do we make sure that we have a robust workforce and the opportunities for the people in the community to participate in this economy? So yeah, we've got a unique situation in Oak Ridge.
Well, and we keep hearing, Councilman Hope and others say that, they're open for business in Oak Ridge. And part of that is exactly this. They're not just going after, catching one big fish. They're trying to create the ecosystem that will support all of this. And I know that the Tri-Cities area is also trying to create that ecosystem. I know in Idaho Falls, we're trying to do the same. Although I would hasten to just suggest that we're not in competition with each other. There is enough nuclear innovation to go around, there are enough applications to go around, and there's enough of an economy to go around that we don't need to necessarily perceive this as a competitive environment where, we're competimates for some kind of resource. However, resource still does matter. And not everybody is fortunate enough to have a governor with that kind of insight who can, with that special wand that governors have, to just free up $50 million. And so go ahead, Ingrid, you want to add something here?
You saw my finger ready to hit the microphone button. I was all set. So I just wanted to say, first of all, a lot of good points have been made. And I'm glad you brought up utilities. Utilities are a key partner in all of this. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is starting to work with the utilities at the 5 sites that I mentioned, because every state has different laws and different regulations. And so in some states, for example, we are required to purchase our power from the utility. And so we're going to work with that utility to make sure that they understand that we really want this electricity, this clean electricity, and the EACs that go along with the electricity as well. That's very important to us. So utilities, key partner in this initiative. Also, it was mentioned the workforce. One of the things that we like about the 5 sites and all the DOE sites is there is a built-in, incredibly skilled workforce. And it could be that others need to be brought in depending on what kind of technology is deployed or technologies. But we see this as a really good benefit for the local communities, more jobs, and Secretary Granholm likes to talk about developing good, clean energy jobs, and that's exactly what it is we want to do. So we would be working with the developer to make sure that they are on board with working with the local community and making sure that the local community is benefiting. The local community has to benefit. We know that. We know how important that is. And also, I mentioned DOD, and they've launched some projects already, and they've completed some already where they have leased land. And we asked them about lessons learned, and they talked about community. And for us, at DOE, this is in our DNA, but it just reinforced for us that we are absolutely on the right track in wanting to emphasize the importance of community. Let's see, what else did I write down here? I think that was it.
All right, well, thank you. I do want to say that EM does seem to get it when it comes to working with communities. And we at ECA are also trying very hard to make sure that we develop a toolkit to help local governments understand the questions they need to be asking and the kinds of things they need to be prepared for. Stephanie and Ashley, I guess I would point to you for a moment and ask, can you talk to us a little bit about what you have been doing to help local communities be able to have the right IQ to be able to be full participants in these projects, these kinds of projects?
Thank you very much. Before I answer that question, I just want to put one little note on the last topic, which is another benefit of these particular sites is that they're very well characterized sites. There's a lot of environmental data. There's a lot of information that actually helps de-risk and de-cost the benefit and adds those additional benefits to siting at these particular locations.
That's exactly what I was not bringing up when I just said real estate, and so I'm glad you came back and caught that.
Stephanie. I appreciate that. That's good.
Well, I'm an environmental person. So
yeah, that's good.
So on working with communities, of course, working with communities and getting early engagement with communities and having two-way conversations, we believe is absolutely critical to the success of any of these potential projects. And so we work with our local and regional stakeholders, tribes, other entities in the areas. We love to get out into our communities and speak with folks to talk to them about the projects that we're working on, but also about any of their potential concerns, so that we can take that back and integrate it into our thinking. Another thing that the National Reactor Innovation Center has done is we are creating a community tool. It will be a web-based tool that has communities firmly in focus. And we're hoping that it will become a resource for communities to be able to go to this one location and gather information, learn about different technologies, learn about different projects. It will also have a GIS mapping tool that will be tied to economic analyses that have been done. And then we're also hoping that it will become a portal for communities to reach out and be able to communicate with other communities who are going through the exact same thing, or, hey, we've been there, done that, learn from our experience. And so we're working on that now. We're hoping to have that roll out in the next year or so.
Very good. Ashley, as you've been dealing just with this single community to try to make the efforts that you're working on successful, what have been your observations about what the community has done well, and maybe what you wish they had known before you started all of this?
So I would say that we've had an opportunity, as I mentioned, to have a long relationship with our community. And so, we've had a lot of engagement over the years from beginning the planning and getting feedback from them. I think it's extremely important to ensure that the community and all of its members have a voice in the process and that they feel like they're being heard from the beginning. We have a tremendous public outreach and public involvement effort as a part of the EM program. But specifically as it relates to these initiatives, we actually, UCOR is just awarded a DOE-wide sustainability award for the work that we've done with workforce development programs in underserved communities. And so it really is just a testament to how we sometimes overlook the untapped resources within our own communities to reach out to these areas, engage with folks, kind of listen to what their needs are, bring them into the process and provide opportunity, economic opportunity, and really provide their voice in the process. So it's just been a tremendous experience in Oak Ridge. I would say it's really opened our eyes and helped us have a better outcome for our region.
Thank you. One of the things that we, with all of the vast tracts of land that you've mentioned, we have, these aren't surrounded by usually or part of teeming metropolises. Usually we're talking about middle and small town America. And in those instances, you find communities that don't necessarily have the resources to have the sophisticated lobbying and engagement relationships, sometimes not even travel money to get to the state capitol on a regular basis, to be able to engage with leadership at the state level. And we know that leadership at the state level is key to the success of projects like this. And so I throw that out as a suggestion for something that needs to be considered, is that sometimes the smaller communities will need some assistance with developing their sophistication, unless, of course, they're ECA communities, in which case, we got it in spades. But anyway, I wanted to just really quickly just give everybody a chance who wants to talk a little bit more about the power purchase agreements. In the past, there have been rumors and misunderstanding, and I'm still probably somewhat twisted in in terms of a perfect understanding of what is and is not allowed. But we've heard things like, oh, the federal government, OMB won't allow, a purchase of an agreement to purchase electricity from a project for more than that can be more than 10 years, or the rules say that they can't, DOE can't make commitments to purchase electricity, and that becomes sort of tricky when you're trying to develop, because, like has been mentioned, you need off-takers as well as investors. And if you don't have a reliable source of a reliable customer like DOE could be, then that becomes a problem when you're trying to pencil and do the math for a project. So can we get some clarity on where the limitations are with power purchase agreements, and maybe what the opportunities are that have been not tapped or misunderstood? Anybody want to take that?
I just want to add real quick before we get in too far into it, is that the power purchase, or I would say it should be titled an energy purchase agreement, because we also have high temperature steam that we can provide to a facility, a production facility. Dow's facility that's there at Seadrift is taking steam as well as electricity. So it's for our technology, and I think a lot of Gen 4 technologies, that it's not just about producing power. At these sites, I think it is, but I think in a broader sense, if we can get agreements to provide steam to an industrial facility, that's just as good. It gives us some stability and certainty in what the future of that price of that commodity looks like. So,
really good point. Really good point. Ingrid?
So this is a complicated landscape. I want to start with that because every state is different. And we've been talking about this very issue within the department, talking with the experts, and where we are coming out right now is we are going to need to work directly with the utility, because more than likely we are going to be purchasing that electricity from the utility. The developer would sell it to the utility. We would be purchasing it from the utility, just like we do now.
Yep.
But there will be a lot more clean electricity available on the open market, and that's what's going to be different. So in every, as I mentioned, in every state, they have different laws, different rules that we have to abide by, and we, of course, will do that. So there are going to be a number of unique situations. There is a unique situation, for example, at Idaho, where we are required to purchase from the utility. I hope that is correct. And then also within the Nevada, there is a complicated situation with the local utility, and I won't go into all the details of it, but I wish it were more cut and dry and simpler, and I wish we could purchase directly from the developer, but it looks like that won't be the case unless the developer happens to be a utility. That would be a different scenario, but we don't know if that will happen, since this is all going to be done competitively.
Okay, thank you.
I wish I could give you a more definitive answer than that, but that's where we are right now.
No, but it's a clean answer, and it makes sense, and it puts everything into the right slot. Mike?
I was just going to say, a power purchase agreement from the utility person on this panel is the cost of energy, right? When I'm going to sell my power to you. So as UAMPS, we have a 6-module configured plant on site. We are marketing actively that power for that 462 megawatt output, a quarter of which is subscribed by UAMPS members. But again, all of this comes down to, as the mayor has aptly pointed out, that price per power. Can you get the customer, can you market that power? And right now, at least the last time we looked at it under NELA, there was the augmentation of the 10-year cap that you referenced on the PPA with a federal government agency. We were looking at increasing that to 40, the amortization life of a nuclear facility, at least in its initial license. So yeah, CBO did not like that number, and that's been the issue right now. Is CBO and the scoring that would go into that. There are now, however, I'll just say, not divulging too much, ways in which we are exploring with Idaho Power is. Excuse me, the woman over there, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Ashley? Stephanie, no, Ingrid, thank you, Ingrid, had mentioned. So I think there are ways we can go about that, but the most clean way would be if we could get Congress to increase the cap, that limit to 40 years. It would open the door for government entities. I know that INL has had a net zero pledge to purchase some of this power, and frankly, they need it, we want to sell it, and we need to sell it to build it. So there you go.
Well, there we go. No project ever rolls out perfectly, and this one has hit its first suggestion even before we're done rolling it out, but that's okay, because that's how it happens here. So let's just turn to, I'm going to turn to you, Stephanie, for a minute, and the Clean Up to Clean Energy is not the only federal government initiative surrounding or with respect to energy. And you had mentioned to me when we had a conversation a little bit about the, now I can't find it, the Construction Technology Initiative. Can you talk a little bit about what that involves?
Sure, and thank you for that question.
Advanced Construction
Technology Initiative. So this is just another way that we are looking at the types of technologies and the types of activities that go on in other industries that have proven to be successful in decreasing costs and improving schedules. And so the Advanced Construction Technology Initiative does just that. Our first project is going to demonstrate 3 different technologies that have been used elsewhere. The first is vertical shaft boring excavation, so the type of construction that they use to build tunnels. The second is concrete and steel composite modular construction. And then the third is using significantly more digital engineering, advanced sensors, and then a digital twin to create this project to demonstrate these technologies so that they can be brought to bear in the nuclear sphere. Because as we know, a lot of the costs and overruns that have happened in nuclear are primarily focused in the civil construction field. And so bringing these types of technology into nuclear, we think will be an added benefit and help the industry move forward with that. And we actually have a really unique opportunity with this particular project to integrate the NRC into this project, because DOE and NRC have a memorandum of understanding that allows the NRC to place a rotational employee in NREC. And so we have a couple of those folks working with us right now. And one is a structural engineer from the NRC with 40 years of experience, and he's been sitting in on this project. And he's actually become a very integral part of the project. And his insight, even though he's not speaking for the NRC, he's bringing to bear all of his experience, pointing out the places where the NRC is going to need to know more information, or here's what they're going to be looking for. And that's been invaluable.
That's actually very interesting, and goes to show that when we cross expertise, we end up sometimes with a much better project. Cross training, we all know it from work, but we sometimes forget to apply it with government. All right, so then I just wanted to, I guess, get a sense from Todd and from Ingrid. You mentioned earlier that this was sort of limited to, or the vision right now was for energy production. But, and you talked about utility, but a utility doesn't necessarily need to sell its energy or its product, or its steam. It doesn't need to necessarily sell it to individuals. It could also sell it to an entity. And I'm thinking maybe a little bit of the Oklo model, where they're thinking, you know, maybe a single industry might be a benefit from some energy production, or, and that might be in phase 2 of clean up to clean energy. But I also have a friend who is a part of the, as I was mentioning to Stephanie earlier today, a friend who's part of the Aspen Institute, and they're having their water, they have a water and energy, you know, focus group, and they're having that meeting this week. And he said that when they were out to dinner on Sunday, before everything kicked off on Monday, they were having casual conversation about, you know, the future really may need to start looking at desalination. And not only that, but as was mentioned this morning by Mr. McConnell, PFAS, or PFAS, however you say it, he is a ubiquitous, you know, concern that maybe if you haven't heard about it yet, you will eventually. And it's one of those problems where you kind of go, like we said about 20 years ago, everything causes cancer. I'm just going to go ahead and not worry about it. You almost want to say, you know, with PFAS, it's everywhere and there's nothing we can do about it. But they're saying that the filtration that can happen with tremendous amounts of energy can actually take care of cleaning the PFAS out of water. So if we're looking at desal and PFAS filtration, those microfiltration, those kinds of things need serious power. And in the past, we all just said, too expensive, can't do it. And we're starting to get to that point now where this is envisioned because nuclear has such potential. And so I guess I just would throw out that there are lots of different applications that we might be, with what we might be able to do on at DOE sites with this tremendous amount of energy. Lastly, or not lastly, but I'm going to quit talking and move on to Mike, the carbon-free power project, sort of at the end of the day when you're considering this project, it's been going for 12, about a dozen or so years, maybe longer. Yeah, longer because it's been talked about for a little longer, but it's the only new nuclear project that is already slated to be on a DOE site. It already has progressed through the NRC to a great extent, had most of those boxes checked, and yet the project is not on easy street. Can you talk a little bit about some of the risks that are still making your job hard?
Certainly, and not to oversimplify, but I mean, I would place risk buckets and the risk that goes in it. So we've had, at some point, government risk. Will we get our grant funded through annual appropriations? That's largely been addressed, and we've had a tremendous appropriation mark this year. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen with Congress. There's the financial commercial risk. I think we've all sort of been acutely aware as we've gone through the development of this project at UAMPS to employ every contractual risk mitigation tool at our disposal because we represent not-for-profit electric utilities. So as part of that, the financing and how it's been structured to avoid cost overruns is important, but also the risk mitigation that would come in the form of cost overrun insurance. That's something that's become an increasingly larger topic. Related also to the risk bucket associated with financing, I would also just throw in too, one of the things as we are paving the way on our project that we're discovering too, are how to work through, and this gets to the administrative agencies, Treasury and IRS, how we're going to work through these additional conditions that have now been placed on receiving the full value of the tax credit, and also for a tax-exempt entity like UAMPS, how we can avail ourselves of that direct Treasury payment, and all of that comes down to working through those administrative rulemaking procedures that are underway right now. I will say though, as I mentioned before, you know, we're eager to, of course, and we see a clear direct benefit in developing the project on DOE sites or on DOE land. But as we do, like I mentioned, go through this, we're in constant conversation with Congress right now about the energy community bonus credit, because DOE owned land largely would fall outside of being eligible for that credit. And that is something that, you know, is a risk, right? When you're looking at a $9 billion project, availing yourselves of additional 10% tax credit is material. So those would be some of the risks. Okay.
And with that, Superfund sites are not considered brownfield sites eligible for this additional 10%. Is that what it boils down to?
Yeah, in the statute, there's 3 provisions. I believe one would be brownfield. I'd have to review it again, but yeah, needless to say, that's something that we're exploring with members of Congress right now as well. So,
Okay.
but this is part of, as everyone's aware, when you have a newly enacted statute that has all these new and novel concepts, it will take time.
So if anybody has a site that they're considering that they're wanting to squeeze every potential tax credit out of it, should they talk to you afterward? You looking to form an alliance?
Yeah, and I can refer you to very competent bond and tax counsel.
Okay, so what are some other risks or challenges associated with development or with that some of the people, that some of the people any of you have worked with on this have faced? Clearly, financial risk is huge, but that can't be the only risk. There's first of a kind risk and some other considerations. So I'll let you kick this off, Matt, but any of you want to chime in on challenges or risks associated with this exciting path forward?
Yeah, I think the challenges are there, and the opportunities are something we'd like to focus on, but there are definitely risks. I think part of the validation of a technology is going out into the free market and finding a site and a community and a developer that wants to build it. And so us going out and working with Dow and Energy Northwest was very validating. And I think if for a DOE funded through ARDP development project being built on a DOE site, we run the risk of being seen as a DOE project or DOE development. And I think, we've really tried to go and demonstrate our capability and the usefulness of our technology by succeeding on the open market, by competing with non-nuclear power sources of power. And so I think there is a risk there of, needing to go out and demonstrate that viability. But that being said, I think the opportunities far outweigh any risks that we might have. And we've always had success when we've paired with the DOE and tried to find a way forward with them as a partner. And I think this is going to go exactly the same as it's gone in the past, and we'll find success as a partnership.
All right. Others want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I would just kind of reiterate that comment I made earlier about that robust ecosystem surrounding these entities and these opportunities. I think, if we're looking at power generation specifically, that's one approach, but, you really need the infrastructure, whether it's workforce development or amenities, even the things that you might not really think about, but that, if you're going to bring a workforce into your area, you need to be able to support that long term. And I think in Oak Ridge, there's an interesting mix of energy companies. It's not just power generation. There's research, there's medical isotopes. So there's a diversity there, and the suppliers, have a surety of that diversity as well. But looking at the land around it, what are the other opportunities for, bringing people, drawing people in, retention and recruitment for the workforce. So just making sure that there's an ecosystem that supports these projects, that we're not just looking at the project kind of in isolation.
All right. So Todd, before we wrap up here, I know I have dominated allowed the conversation to be dominated with this idea of nuclear development. But in fact, this is about clean energy. And as Ingrid was describing it, there's more to it than just nuclear, or more possibilities. And I told you I was going to give you a hard time if you were going to tell me that, oh yeah, we want wind and solar, because wind and solar don't meet baseload energy needs, and I was going to push back on that. But let's talk a little bit about clean energy, that second half of the title of this initiative. What's your vision, and what do you perceive as being possible and what's needed? You mentioned hydrogen earlier.
Sure. I think when people think about clean energy, you often go to solar or wind, but the way the government looks at it, or at least OSED looks at it, is clean energy is a spectrum, and it has lots of technologies. For instance, carbon capture on existing coal or natural gas plants. That's clean energy. If I can point source capture this carbon dioxide before it ever leaves, that significantly cleans up that plant. Direct air capture. This projects we've announced 2 that we're funding to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and sequester it. Industrial demonstration projects. How do you make industry cleaner? It doesn't mean tearing it down. It doesn't mean necessarily putting a solar farm on top. There's a lot of different ways you can do either fuel switching or just clean the project itself and make it less carbon intensive. And so those one. Hydrogen obviously is a big one, gets a lot of attention. Fuel switching from a fossil fuel to hydrogen Obviously, when hydrogen burns, it does not give off carbon dioxide. So are there ways you can use that fuel in what you're doing? So clean energy, it's a very broad spectrum. It's more than just a renewable energy, behind the meter or in front of the meter to supply power to your site. I think it touches everything. I will put in one more plug real quick. You had mentioned small communities and support for them. There actually is a program. We fund something called the TIC-TACs, Technical Assistance Centers, in partnership with EPA. There are 12 regions around the country. You can call in if you're a small community, 10,000 people or less, and get some assistance in developing responses to grants or cooperative agreements. Also understanding the sometimes lack of resources for smaller communities. Some of our programs for energy transition in those areas move from a 50-50 cost share to an 80-20, where the government pays 80, understanding that there is. So certainly we've recognized small communities have different challenges, and we're trying to address those. But again, to your point, I think clean energy is far bigger than just a wind farm or a solar farm. There's lots of ways you can tackle this issue.
Thank you very much. It behooves us to all to have a good energy IQ and to be more sophisticated than I was thinking that we might be. So this is good. The time is spent, but I want to give everybody and anybody on the panel a chance to sort of offer some closing insights that issues or topics we may not have covered. Go ahead.
I'll go first. We can just work our way down maybe. But I just want to say overall, especially with the Hanford site specifically, to be part of the full circle narrative of that site being a Superfund site, but then being used for clean energy and then being used for potentially deployment of a fourth generation advanced reactor. That restoration and respect for the land and for the community is just an amazing thing to potentially be a part of. And I think it's a great narrative for the DOE to be pushing forward. So, yeah.
Thank you. Ingrid.
Great. Thank you very much, Matt. And I really liked what Matt said earlier about the opportunities, far outweigh the challenges and the risks. And that's absolutely true. So we are, engaged in something at DOE that we haven't done before, but that's what we do at DOE. So we are really excited about this initiative. There is an RFI out on the street that EM has issued for Hanford. We encourage you to take a look at that RFI. We want to hear from folks, hear your ideas, not only people from industry, but also the communities. So we have a website that's dedicated to Clean Up to Clean Energy. Just go in and Google, or it's easier with Microsoft Bing, DOE Clean Up to Clean Energy, and follow what we're doing. We want to hear from you, and perhaps we'll see many of you at Hanford, Washington on September 22nd for the Information Day. And we'll be following up with days also at Idaho, probably in later October, and then at WIP and also at Nevada. So please follow us. And we really look forward to working with many of you as we go forward. Thanks.
All right. Stephanie?
So I would just echo the enthusiasm, and this is a really exciting time. But I would also say that the time is of the essence, and we need to move quickly in order to meet this moment. But we also have to hold fast to our safety and not compromise on that at all. And we also need to ensure that we allow sufficient time for robust community engagement along the way. And I think someone yesterday said slower is faster. And I think that's right. I think we need to be very thoughtful and strategic, but we need to be sure that we're acting now. I think there's a Chinese proverb that says, when is the best time to plant a tree? It was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So I would say that today is the day to start on this path.
Thank you. Anybody on this side? It's not mandatory, but you're welcome to make comments if you have anything to add.
I was just going to say, I flew out here on 9/11, and so for 2/3 of my life, my adult life, we've been talking about and mobilized and waged war. We've been working on this project for about 1/3 of my life, and so time is of the essence, and so is political will. And so every time I'm back here, I'm eternally optimistic, but it does take people coming together to accomplish big things. So anyway, just wanted to leave with that.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I will say that everybody has a program, or at least you had a chance to get one. On the back, the Energy Communities Alliance is doing its part to help educate local communities and make them more sophisticated and better partners for either these projects or any other you can think of. And our next forum will be held in May in Richland, Washington, the Tri-Cities area. And we invite anybody who has an itch to scratch when it comes to new nuclear development or the new nuclear economy to be a part of that meeting. And you can engage with anybody here, Googleable, findable, use the context clues in your program. You can find these folks and start some conversations. Thanks so much for being an audience that acted like you cared. This is good. Sorry we didn't have time for Q&A, but thank you.